So there we are, live again. It's Mark Littlewood from the Business of Software, and today I'm joined by one of the smartest guys in Switzerland who's involved in software. Well, certainly strategy software. Alex Osterwalder, how are you?
Great, great. Thanks for inviting me. It's cool.
Really nice to see you. Where are you based today? Is that your home or is that your office?
This is my office. It's basically in the former data center, European or maybe even global data center, Philip Morris. But now it's a place where I have my home, or where my sticky notes have their home.
Fantastic. I don't think I've seen such a whiteboarded office in a little while. We've actually got rosettes here for, this is actually the snorting horses room, which is why they're...
Awesome.
Where are those?
Cool.
Can you see the lights?
I can.
Very cool, the little sort of SLA horses' heads. So, yeah, no whiteboard in here, but plenty of space for creativity. Alex, can you just the video that you did for your talk in Business Software Europe last year on tools to help you run your business has been up for a week or so now, and I know people have been enjoying that. And one of the things that we'd like to do here is get any questions from people on that, or any other questions you have for Alex. You can just join the Q&A, which should be up on the right hand side of your screen. Ask questions and we can pick them up. Alex, just give us a little bit of an overview of what you've been doing, and I'd also like to catch up on what's happening in your business, because you've gone from superstar consultant, author, speaker to just running a plain old software business.
Don't ever call me consultant again, okay? Has a bit of a bad rep. Strategy consultants are the worst breed, but I think it's changing. We can talk about that after. You know that I'm passionate, somewhat obsessed by business tools, by creating tools that really help us think about our businesses as entrepreneurs, executives, and you know, come up with new business ideas and implement those. So started out with this business model canvas that many of you might know by now, and then we went on to create more tools, because I think you need several tools to think about your business and about strategy and innovation and entrepreneurship. So we came up with the value proposition canvas, and then we went on, and that's all in the video. Say, hey, you know, we know that the best combination is to take the best three tools. So we integrated this with the lean startup and customer development movement, and said, you know, this is great, this is adopted, let's combine this, but could we add some more value by adding some practical tools? And we designed the test card and learning card to help people shape their experiments. And we basically came up with that because we were facing the same issue. We had a lot of ideas, we wanted to test them, and we were not extremely good at testing. We did a lot of interviews, we did a lot of experiments on our website, but we were all over the place. So we started structuring that with these new tools that we added to the lean startup process. And then just a year ago, I got in touch again with a good old friend who inspired our whole company to think about visual thinking, Dave Gray. We connected again, and we started you know, working on the tool that he had already launched, which is the culture map, and we did a new iteration, and we talk about at the next Business of Software in Boston. So really this idea of tools to help us structure our thinking process, but making them extremely practical, that's what I'm passionate about. And then, you know, turning that into software is where our business is, to accompany that. So you have paper-based tools that make your life easier, but you can't just do everything on sticky notes like here in the back. You work with a global team, you need to have software that supports this whole collaboration process around designing and testing new ideas.
Interesting. So, funnily enough, I think that leads quite nicely into the next question, which is from Joe. I don't know where that's come in from, but how hard was it moving to a product business? And this is something that we get asked
Well,
all the time.
it wasn't hard at all. It wasn't actually hard at all. It was a very deliberate decision. We had the advantage that the methodology that we created in our first book, Business Model Generation, people adopted it and it spread around the world and people loved it. The question was, when we got to a point where we had 100,000 books sold and now over 1 million books sold, what do we do next as a team who is behind the book? And the obvious choice would be, hey, we're going to do certification, training, and consulting. And that would have been probably the fastest path to quick money and good money. But I had a consultancy with a couple of friends, and we sold that, and it's just not what I'm excited about most. So I like doing it every now and then to keep the foot on the ground, to understand what the real issues are in companies that I work with. But I don't want to do it as a living, and I don't want to do it to build a company. So we asked ourselves, what could we do? And we had this idea of building an enterprise software company. Crazy enough, right? But we were also pretty realistic, knowing that this is damn hard. So we started with an iPad app. So we took our business model canvas and said, we're going to make an iPad app. This is not going to be our business, but it's going to be our first experiment. And even before doing the app, we said, hey, what if we put up a landing page like you do nowadays when you have an app idea, and we test this, test the pricing. So we did all of that. And it's hard to build a business, but it's not hard to get started on a product business, in particular today with all these tools and processes that you have. Now, the big thing that I completely underestimated and that we underestimated as a company, which was learning, and you can only do this by doing it, we knew it, we're building a new market, something that doesn't exist, and that has its own challenges. If you launch a new photo app or social network, that has its challenges, but they're more competitive, right? You have to gain market share. We're building a strategy application. We basically hope to build the SAP of strategy. You have to create that market. It doesn't exist. You have to change the way people work, the way people collaborate. Using software when you think about strategy. Whoever said that? So the product business itself was not the challenge, but building a market where none exists, that has its own challenges, but that's what's fun, right? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, interesting. So Paul Hobcraft says, what's the dream?
So let's say before we get to the dream, kind of the realistic objectives, in 5 years, we're going to acquire SAP, and in 10 years, Oracle. And then we can talk about the dreams. No, the dream is, to be very honest, while we're really excited about building a business, I think my team and I are most excited about changing the way people conduct business. Meaning that, hey, we want people who think about strategy, who think about innovation, and who try to build new growth initiatives to become a lot more professional in the tools they use and how they apply them. That's what really drives us. So, silly kind of mission that we have is, to turn business professionals into users of professional business tools. And what inspires me personally is, take a heart surgeon. You don't want your heart surgeon to show up with a Swiss Army knife when he's going to conduct surgery.
Yeah.
So I think we're not yet there when it comes to strategy. We're not trained for 13 years like a surgeon to just understand the anatomy of a body. There's an anatomy of business. Our companies are pretty complex beasts, and they operate in a complex environment. I think we need sophisticated tools, not complicated tools, sophisticated tools. The most sophisticated ones are actually simple, but we need a series of those tools, just like a surgeon will have a series of scalpels and procedures and trains that again and again. I think we can do the same in strategy, innovation, and entrepreneurship. We can develop a better understanding of what companies are, all of the aspects of it, right? And that's why we're getting interested a lot more in organizational culture. you have strategy, you have product, you have marketing and acquisition. All of those things are own topics, but then you have the implementation part. How do I create a business where people are excited to work at? That's one of the
Yeah.
biggest challenges in the 21st century. So back to the initial question, since I'm kind of rambling here, my dream is to create an organization where the most talented and greatest people want to work, because that's an unresolved question today. And we might point to Apple today and say that's an exciting company. Apple makes exciting stuff, but it's not an exciting place to work at if you want to have a work-life balance, if you want to have a family, if you just want to have a life beyond work. So I think we need to create those work spaces and workplaces of the future where you can do your best work, come up with the best products, and really have a life. That's a challenge that I think entrepreneurs are facing and companies are facing in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of the things that a number of speakers at this year's business software have brought up. Is how do you kind of retain your vision as you're scaling? You're kind of going to 500 people when you set your company up in order to provide a platform for people to do great work. And I think this seems to be quite a common theme as companies get bigger. Is how do you retain those values? So I suppose that kind of moves neatly towards culture tools, actually. But just before that, Paul Hobcroft's got a question about giving us a little bit more information about what you mean by toolsmiths.
So when I say tools, business tools, conceptual tools, I don't just mean frameworks or templates. I mean, great frameworks that help in our thinking, but that also have a great user interface and that have a great user experience. So it's not enough to come up with a sound management concept that helps us in the thinking, but we need to turn that into a sound business tool. And this is something that we always wanted to do. When we started out with Yves Pigneur to think about the business model canvas, what's the tool that could help us think about business models? What we realized over time is how important simplicity and the visual aspect of these tools are. And I think a lot of thinkers neglect that because they think the concept is enough. We did some research on why people adopted the business model canvas. You can find it online. And what we learned is that the intuitiveness of the business model canvas, the simplicity, and leaving out buzzwords to make it practical, making it visual, something you can use immediately in a meeting room with a low learning curve, that provided a great tool for them that they could immediately use. And when I say they, it's entrepreneurs, it's executives, marketers, and anybody you can think of who wants to build a business or talk about a business. And that was a confirmation of some of our initial thinking. And it's not easy to do to create great business tools. So when I see these concepts popping up and then people put canvas on it or framework or whatever, they have 19 boxes, super complicated. That's never going to be adopted, right? And the goal is to come back to what I said before. The goal is to help people do better work and change the way they do business, get them to use business tools. If you want your tools to be adopted, you need to make them simple, intuitive, and practical to solve relevant problems. I think that's one of the few things that we excel at in our company. We're really good at making these kind of conceptual tools. And now we're in this next phase where we're trying to make these tools simple to use in a software context, in a software as a service. That's a whole other challenge where the word UI and UX, user experience and user interface, has the real meaning, but I think it has the same meaning just on paper as well. It's just that management thinkers neglect that aspect a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And is there a difference between the people that buy your tools and the people that use your tools?
What do you mean with that?
Well, who's actually the buyer in the enterprise, and presumably that person's running a project, so they want other people to use it. How does who's buying this?
Yeah.
Who's buying these tools, and how do they get used as they're adopted?
Sure. And I'll start first, kind of really when we say tools, there's one is conceptual tools and one is software tools. And it's only over time that this will really be a synonym. But if you take one of the examples I find most exciting, it's MasterCard. And the credit card company really scaled the usage of the business model canvas and value proposition canvas in their company. In their case, the buyer was the chief product officer, because he wanted a language, and these were their terms, their terminology. They said a language. And here's another one. They said a better way to tell the story of how we create value in our company, for our company, and how we create value for our customers. Such a simple thing, right? What's the shared language to have this conversation about how are we creating value for our company and for our customers? Two very different topics, and we have to have two different tools for that. And he came across the business model canvas at an executive education class in Berkeley, and then he started rolling that out. The users today, the first users of the tool in the case of MasterCard, was the entire product team. So I think they trained, 50 to 60% of the entire product team, which is big at MasterCard, in using this shared language and using the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas. And then some of those go on to start using software because they have to collaborate across teams around the world. Then that spread to the marketing teams because they have the same kind of issues. How do we clearly say how we're creating value for our company and for our customers? It's very interesting. In another case, this is a big software company. Their sales team started looking at the business model as a way to actually understand their customers' business models. Very different use case, but again, it was this simple tool, this simple language that allowed them to make sense of the world that was more structured than what they did before. Because we all know these business meetings, right, where we sit around the table, we have the smartest people in the room, and then it's blah, 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 blah. Because we don't have a structured approach, a process and some visual tools that help us shape our conversation, that help us shape our thinking. Because of that, we're going to be rambling all over the place, and we're going to go to talk about strategy, we'll talk about product, we'll talk about technology, we'll talk about the people we need to hire. That's going to be a mess. There's no way you can conduct heart surgery with that kind of thing, right? Dip it a little bit here, a little bit there, and hoping that somehow it's going to end up here. What's really exciting to see is that people are getting better at this. And while it was more of a bottom-up movement, the tools really came from the doers. The doers were the first to adopt this. I would say web entrepreneurs, even before the people in companies who started adopting this. And now what we see in large companies, it's spreading up to very senior management. I've seen one team of a leading consumer brand, a consumer brand that is, how can I say something without revealing it? And they did a workshop with the leadership team to assess the risk of their business model today being disrupted. Okay, so that was a top-down approach, and that led to a lot of excitement. They said, hey, we've never done such an amazing workshop where we really assess the risk of our company being disrupted. And they then realized we should be working on business models in our company, and they started setting up project teams that would come up with new business models, or the appropriate business models.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, there's all sorts of things coming in here. I do like this one from, this is Paul Kenny. One of the great things about your modeling tools is that they're very manual, non-digital. People love to scribble on walls and put stickies up. How hard was it to create the same level of collaboration and the hands-on experience in a software product?
Yeah, I think, you know, what you need to understand is one doesn't replace the other. I'm a big fan of, I mean, you see I have, you know, posted all the sticky notes, partially, here comes the geek in me, partially because I believe these things are going to be big touch screens in the future, that I want my office to be one big touch screen. For me, the wall is the desk of the future. But today, I think, you know, when you do a workshop, I just worked with a pharma company. We brought together 20 people and we did a 3-day workshop where we were working in tactile way. That's fine. The thing is that once these people leave and they're supposed to test these business models and value propositions and iterate on them and change them, there's no way paper is going to work. It's okay, what are you going to do? You're going to send around PowerPoints? It's not going to work. So that's where software comes in and helps you a lot, right? Where you can have, number one, collaboration. You can add stuff that you can't add easily on paper, the whole financial simulations, the tracking of your tests. So I think they're very complementary. And one doesn't replace the other. You want to still use physical workshops, bringing people together, putting up sticky notes. But you can't do that with globally distributed teams. And what we see now with Strategyzer is we actually have quite a few startup teams who are in the same city, but you know what? They want a tool to digitally track their iterations, their conversations, when did they make this decision? And that's just not easy to do in a project room. So I think in the future, we'll have project rooms that are digital and are like tactile. You know, we'll have the digital sticky wall that will feel like that. That's when we'll have the best of two worlds combined. For the moment, you'll do some things in the physical world, and you'll do some things in the digital world where digital makes sense. They both have strengths and weaknesses.
Great. Okay, thank you, Paul. Do you think any of the current tools taught in business schools have any merit? SWOT, PESTLE, Boston Matrix, etc.
Sure, yeah, so for sure. I think some have expired. Michael Porter, rest in peace. So I think some make less sense today, and some still make sense. And you know, I'm actually a big fan of using best-in-breed tools. I'll mention them. But if you take the value chain by Porter, it's a dominating approach to sketch out your company. That was 1985 in a production area. It made a lot of sense then. Today, you're not going to be able to sketch out Facebook with the value chain concept. So that has expired in the sense that if you want to go beyond production companies, not going to make sense to use the value chain. And if you take Porter's 5 forces, same thing. So I think it still has some value, but the idea behind the 5 forces is that 5 industry forces are going to shape your business model. Now, tell that to Apple. They just didn't listen and said, no, we're the force. We're going to shape the industry. So there is no more such thing as 5 forces that shape Apple. It's Apple, Google, and Amazon, whoever you want to take of those actors, who shape the industry. And, you know, talking about industry analysis, that's where Michael Porter was big and where the 5 forces were. Industry analysis makes no more sense today. And I'll take Apple as an illustration. So in what industry is Apple in? Are they in hardware? Are they in software? Are they in content? Are they in cars now? They're everywhere. So you can't analyze them in terms of industry. You have to analyze their business model. And we're going to see the same thing in a lot of different areas. Newspapers today, if they just focus on newspapers, they're dead. Even if you take the Financial Times, you know, they're now in the conference business. They're using their brand to build a business model. It's not a newspaper anymore. We'll see the same in areas like pharma, etc. Industry analysis makes a lot less sense. Now, are there still some tools that make sense in business school? For sure. I think some of the new ones, like, you know, I'm a big fan of Kim and Mogorn's Blue Ocean strategy tools, where they have a simple tool. Again, it's simplicity. A simple tool called the Strategy Canvas that allows you to visually compare value propositions. It's great, right? You do want to teach that. Or they have the 4 actions framework where they ask 4 simple questions where you're look at your product, your value proposition, and change it. What could I add? What could I reduce? What could I make stronger and weaker? And that's basically how the Nintendo Wii, kind of started out. They actually reduced processing power, makes no sense, but they increased actually the whole playful aspect, and they targeted a new customer segment. So I think some of these tools have a lot of value. The whole challenge will be, what's the ecosystem of tools that are relevant for business problems today? As a software entrepreneur, as a manager in a pharmaceutical company, I think this new toolbox is emerging today, and we hope to be part of that, playing a role in building this new toolbox.
Very interesting. Okay, so then that maybe moves quite neatly into culture, and the fact that you've identified culture as being one of those things that you can apply tools to is one thing. Why do you think it's a big enough market to go after? And tell us a little bit about what your culture tools are doing.
So, why is it a big enough market? Anybody who's worked in a large organization, if you ask them, hey, internal politics, who hasn't been there and seen that, and having seen teams of people where they go on working even though they know the product is a dead end, or 9-to-5ers who advance in their career, they're not creating any value for the company, and you as a hardworking person who's adding value is getting nowhere. Those kind of things shouldn't happen in a good organizational culture. Now, the reason why Dave Gray and us, we really started getting excited about this tool, about working on culture, is because it's such a fuzzy topic. Right? It's a little bit like business models. When we started out, nobody could really define what a business model was. At that time, actually, we were not the first to talk about business models. There were a lot of concepts out there. If you take culture, organizational culture, there's actually a lot of talk about it, but very few concepts that really allow you to think about culture in a practical way, just like an executive would have to. Right? Around organizational culture, more from a, almost say, an anthropological or maybe even political science kind of perspective. There's a lot less work from a practical business executive perspective or a software entrepreneur. And that's what got us excited. Hey, could we design a tool that would help you design organizational culture? Wouldn't that be cool? And in particular, as an entrepreneur, I want to design that great organizational culture where I would love to work if I were an employee. And it's not easy to do that, but tools will make that easier. But not everybody has to go through this trial and error process of, how am I going to do this? If there's a tool and a process that tells you how you can do this, you can be a lot more efficient. So we started working on that. Actually, Dave Gray started out. We did a first workshop together in Lausanne. He came up with the first prototype tool, and he went out immediately to test it. And then last year we got together again, and together with Yves Pigneur, we iterated his culture map at the time, and we came up with a new one that we're very comfortable with, which is super simple. Basically, you ask yourselves, what are the outcomes in an organization? Which behavior led to that outcome? And which levers, formal or informal, led to the behavior? What I mean with that is, if you take a lever, well, certain incentive systems will lead to one organizational culture or another over time. But if you work this behavior, well, that's the behavior you're going to get. Some levers are formal, like salary and bonuses. Some levers are informal, like a manager. Every time somebody comes up with a new idea, pushing that person down. That's an informal lever, but it's a lever that will influence behavior, and that behavior will lead to outcome. So if you're a company, I want to foster innovation. I want an innovation culture. That's the outcome I want. I want people to come up with new stuff. Every month I want a new part coming up, whatever. Well, you need to create a certain behavior, and you're going to create that behavior by putting in place the right levers. Culture is nothing else than behavior. And behavior can actually be designed. It's just that we don't take enough time to understand that. So Dan Pink talked a lot about motivation in he has this amazing ability to take science and make it, understandable for people. Motivation. And if we would take those levers that he talks about, for example, we would design organizations where people are motivated. And the outcome would be what? People who are motivated at work and do their best work ever.
Yeah.
So, visual tool, you can have a structured conversation about that pretty complex problem. And that's how you'll make progress. You can assess your existing culture, which levers lead to this wrong behavior that we don't want. And then you can use the same tool to design the culture that you want to see. And since this is such a big problem in so many companies, and you hear employees, talking about the terrible work culture that they have in their large companies, why isn't nobody seriously addressing it? So I think it's the best step. It's not sufficient alone, but it's an important first step to start tackling that problem.
So interesting follow-up question here from James McClave. What would be the next steps after using a tool? So how do you get to your goal culture, or is this about defining what your goal culture is, and then moving towards it, or how do you work that through?
Yeah. So once you can start with the assessment of the existing culture, or you can start immediately with the desired culture. So, within Strategyzer, I also manage the content team, and one of the things that I want us to produce is content that is extremely practical and relevant to our readers and users. And to produce that, we need a certain behavior. We need a behavior that includes, listening to customers or readers or users, business practitioners all the time, integrating what we learn, digesting that into insights that will find their way back into the stuff we create as content. That's a particular culture, that listening culture that we want to create. How do you create that? Well, by designing the right levers. Some of the levers could be incentive systems. Some of the levers could be, formal review processes about certain aspects that you want to have all the time. I think the big problem today when people talk about organizational culture is they put up big principles. And that's a good start. You're going to talk about what you want to see in your company as behavior. But the problem is that's not enough. Now, you can say, we want to see this behavior, this behavior, this behavior. We want people to collaborate. We want people to engage in constructive dialogues. That's great. That's what you want to have. That's the behavior you want to see. So how do you make that behavior happen? By putting in place the right levers. Such a simple thing. If you can map out, this is the outcome I want, this is the behavior I want, then you can ask yourself, what are the levers I need to put in place to make that behavior actually happen? And then, like in the lean startup approach for business models, maybe you can test if those levers have an impact or not. Is rewarding people after every successful meeting, going to lunch or whatever, and paying for free lunch, is that going to have an impact or not? Same kind of. You put in place certain things with the mindset that I believe this lever is going to provoke that behavior, attitude, that kind of culture. But I'm not sure. I don't know how people are going to do that. I haven't been in the future, just like I don't know if people are going to buy a product. What if I applied the lean startup thinking and said, I'm going to test if this lever really has an impact. And little by little, you're going to put in place great levers that create the culture you desire. So that's kind of the way I would proceed. Tool, testing the tool, creating the situation you want.
Interesting. Now, well-known expert facilitator. Mr. Paul Kenny asks a question. To what extent do these big fuzzy topics like culture require expert facilitation as well as good tools? Or can people just pick up the tool and run with it?
So I'll start out with my experience with the tool we've tested a lot more, where I facilitated a lot the business small canvas and the value proposition canvas. You can use them very quickly because they're simple, but it's just like you can use a scalpel really quickly. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to perform heart surgery. So are there people who are better at this? Are there people who are better at facilitating these kind of sessions? You bet. And when it comes to organizational culture, it's even more important because it's a very sensitive topic. So if you know you have a difficult organizational culture, like people are not having a dialogue, they're shooting each other down all the time, it's not constructive, people are demotivated, it's probably not going to work if the boss who created, who allowed that to happen, facilitate the meeting. Could be that it works. So I don't want to be dogmatic on this because maybe, the boss showing or the manager showing the willingness to make change happen can be a first step. And the tool can help, get them to do something that works. Because the problem is often people didn't know how to do this until now, so they started initiatives that led nowhere. Yeah. If you have a tool that produces results, even somebody who's not expert at this will get some results. Now, if you have an external facilitator who has done this a lot and who really knows the pitfalls and who knows what are the challenges you're going to face and knows in which situation to use what kind of facilitation technique, of course you're going to get to another level. So I would suggest, of course, that you want to consider a facilitator, but I do believe, just from my experience with the tools we created so far, that you even get results without the external facilitator. But when it comes to culture, an external facilitator can make a difference. And those external facilitators can be aggressive and use words that internal people could not. When I go in a meeting, I'm extremely tough in terms of facilitation because I don't need people to like me. I don't need to 4 hours so you kind of say, oh, this is the boss, he has the budget, I'm not going to kind of annoy him because otherwise he's not going to hire me again. No, I tell him, that's the boss's day. Does this contribute to the conversation or not, or can we move on? Because I stick to the tools and the process because I know that's going to give birth to great ideas. And that's where the facilitator can be extremely tough, and where an internal person could maybe not, because they would jeopardize, some sort of capital.
Career type thing. Fascinating. Okay, brilliant. What do you want to learn at Business Software Conference? Who are you looking to interact with?
I want to learn really more about building a business, in particular from entrepreneurs or marketers who have faced this challenge of building new markets. I think learning from others who have done it, and hearing their mistakes and asking yourself, am I making those mistakes right now? Or how could I avoid those mistakes? That's extremely valuable. So being able to exchange ideas, experiences, and learnings with peers is extremely valuable, and that's what I'm really looking for at a business of software. And then, of course, also learning from potential customers. We always do customer development in the sense that we're not selling, we're trying to learn. I want to learn from people who we might sell to in a more targeted way, like product managers, because I'm not smarter than my customers. I need to listen to their jobs, pains, and gains. If I don't listen carefully to what drives them, I'm not going to make great products. So that's those two roles: learning from peers, learning from customers and potential customers. That's what I really look for at Business of Software.
Fantastic. Well, look, really appreciate your time today. It's great to get a little insight into the boss's lair, and see that you're definitely dog fooding there. Do you do? Is there a thing in your office that you do without one of your own tools?
Um, yeah, well, we use other tools like Blue Ocean Strategy stuff. Is there anything I do without tools?
Yeah.
Yeah, mistakes.
Fantastic. On that note, Alex, thanks so much for your time. We'll see you in Boston, 21 to 23 of September. And any questions that people have that haven't been covered? I know there were a couple that came in quite late about writing books, but that's probably a topic of another hangout, I think. I know Clark Ching has written a couple himself, which were very good on Agile. So I'll put you together. But speak to you soon, and see you in September. Thanks so much, Alex. Take care.
Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye.